Hello everyone, I am the entrance of Mila. As you can see over here, Mila is the biggest deep learning AI institute in Canada and in all over the world as well. Over here we have more than 1,000 researchers with more than 50 top-class, world-class AI professors. So follow me to find out more how Mila look like. You can see here are all the top company from IBM to Google, Intel, Microsoft. And over there, we have FPT and Hitachi. FPT is the only company from Southeast Asia. So here is a place where Mila's values and missions drawn on the wall. As you can see here, it's all in French, since Mila is located in Quebec, a French state of Canada. And basically here it says, it's a pillar of strategy which has talent in AI, cutting-edge research collaboration for different projects, and the influence for our society. If you look at the map over here, you can see that Mila is divided into different zones. The call booths where people can go inside and have a course and enjoy private specs. You can see over here that we have a very nice little cube. This is for a group meeting. I have my pictures with my kids over here and Merry Christmas card from everyone. So this zone is the co-working space. It's a place that everyone can come and use the space. We have innovation, development and technologies where people are joining to do research together. Technology transfer is a place which transfers technology knowledge to companies and governments. We have a special spec for students startups. So basically, if students have any idea for startups, they can join the program. I want to highlight this part, that we have corporate labs. This area are designed for companies to put their labs inside Mila in order to assess the latest innovation of AI, and they can do joint collaboration and work with Mila. Agora and auditoriums are other spaces for very large meetings and conferences. Over here is an auditorium with more than 200 seats. Students can come here every Friday morning to have a tea talk, which is a conference that Mila's invites researchers all over the world to come and give talk every Friday morning. Here is a kitchen place. People can come here and enjoy some chess game, have lunch over here. It seems to be a very open space. Everyone can enjoy coffees and have conversations with each other.
Nice to meet you. How are you? Good. Yeah, come here. Yeah, how are you doing?
I hope you enjoy the tour to Mila Lab that I have shown. I really hope my college from FPT can have a chance to come here, work with professors over here, talk to Mila's researchers and students, exchange ideas and bring a lot of innovative ideas of AI to academic and also to industry. Hope to see you again here one day. Goodbye.
From the depths of our oceans to the heights of space, there are no limits to what we can accomplish when we push past our current boundaries. There is nothing more potent than the will to learn and to share what we know. The future is happening faster than you think. Curious about new tech trends? We're here to help you stay up to date with this fast-changing world. At each live talk, we will discuss different technologies and trends with global experts from countries around the world. Ask your own questions and learn how to get the answers you want to get on the forefront of technology with Tech Innovators.
Hello everyone, I am the adjunct of Mila. As you can see over here, Mila is the biggest deep learning AI institute in Canada and in all over the world as well. Over here we have more than 1,000 researchers with more than 50 top-class, world-class AI professors. So follow me to find out more how Mila look like. You can see here are all the top company from IBM to Google, Intel, Microsoft. And over there, we have FPT and Hitachi. FPT is the only company from Southeast Asia. So here is a place where Mila's values and missions drawn on the wall. As you can see here, it's all in French, since Mila is located in Quebec, a French state of Canada. And basically here it says, it's a pillar of strategy which has talent in AI, cutting-edge research collaboration for different projects, and the influence for our society. If you look at the map over here, you can see that Mila is divided into different zones. The call booths where people can go inside and have a course and enjoy private specs. You can see over here that we have a very nice little cube. This is for a group meeting. I have my pictures with my kids over here and Merry Christmas card from everyone. So this zone is the co-working space. It's a place that everyone can come and use the space. We have innovation, development and technologies where people are joining to do research together. Technology transfer is a place which transfers technology knowledge to companies and governments. We have a special spec for students startups. So basically, if students have any idea for startups, they can join the program. I want to highlight this part, that we have corporate labs. This area are designed for companies to put their labs inside Mila in order to assess the latest innovation of AI, and they can do joint collaboration and work with Mila. Agora and auditoriums are other spaces for very large meetings and conferences.
On June 12, 2020, FPT, the very first Southeast Asia Technology Corporation, signed a partnership agreement with Mila, the world's leading AI research institute. Since then, we have achieved many remarkable results and reached many special milestones, opening up opportunities for breakthroughs in the AI era, not only for FPT, but also for Vietnam. Let's take a look at the 2-year journey between FPT and Mila. Close collaboration between Mila professors and FPT Software AI's scientists create high-impact projects on an open science research framework. We currently have 3 ongoing research projects with Mila. In the ML4 Code project, 1 paper has been submitted to a top-ranking conference and is awaiting results. In Q4 2022 and 2023, we plan to submit 5 more papers in top-tier AI conferences. In April 2022, Mila's partnership director, Frederick Lauren, officially visited FPT and the Bengio government to site-check a location for a possible future AI conference summer school in Kainan, Bingding. And further consultation occurred on the building of the FPT AI Lab Research Hub between Vietnam, FPT, and Mila in Quy Nhon. FPT Software AI Residency Program recruits top young Vietnamese talents to work with world-class scientists at FPT and Mila to do research and implement AI to benefit society. Since working with Mila, the FPT AI Residency Program has contributed greatly to the development of FSOFT AI Lab. In 2022, FPT Software AI Lab is one of only 2 Vietnamese AI research institutes that have publications at A-star conferences. We have total 32 paper submissions, of which 10 papers were accepted at A/A-star conferences and Q1 journals. 5 were accepted at other workshops and conferences, and 17 submitted papers are under review. In April 2022, FPT Software organized Tech Innovators No. 6, Bridging AI Research to Real-World Application, with special guest Dr. Frederick Lauren. This event attracted hundreds of people from all backgrounds in the Vietnam AI community and drew impressive numbers: 86.1 thousand reach, 24.4 thousand views, and 2.1 thousand engagement. Entering the 3rd year of the cooperation, we will aim to work further together to achieve long-term value, such as 1. Deliver high-impact and challenging machine learning research projects. Continue consulting and cooperating to build AI Center in Quy Nhon. Number 2. Invite PhD students from Mila to visit FPT to contribute and consult on FPT software research projects and product demos. FPT in return will send FPT AI residents to Mila to deliver scientific papers at top-tier international AI conference in 2023. 3. Co-organize a wide variety of activities and training sessions to stay current with the latest scientific advances, research trends, and upcoming publications of AI.
So, welcome everyone to the Tech Innovators. So my name is Phong Nguyen. I'm the Chief AI Officer of FPT Software, and I'm very happy today to be your host again. Today we're going to discuss together the topic of AI in drug discovery. As you may know, Tech Innovators is a series of events designed for people working in tech. And our event today is even more special as we are celebrating the 2-year partnership between FPT and the leading AI research institute, Mila Quebec AI Institute. In the last 2 years of partnership, FPT Software has started a program called AI Residency, which nurture young AI talents, and we have seen them thrive at international AI conferences such as ICML, NeurIPS, and in this episode, we are honored to welcome the top minds and special guests from Vietnam and Canada. So from Mila Quebec AI Institute, please welcome Professor Yoshua Bengio, one of the world's most influential scientists. Join us from Canada. Hello, professors.
Hello, Fong.
From also from Mila, we have Mr. Frederick Lauren, the Senior Director of Partnership. Hello, Frederick.
Hello everyone.
It's my pleasure to introduce to Professor Ho Tu Bao, the Director of the Data Science Laboratory at VIASM. Hello, Professor Bao. And from FPT side, thank you. From FPT side, please welcome Dr. Trương Gia Bình, the Chairman of FPT Corporation.
Hello. Chào Bình.
We have Ms. Chu Thị Thanh Hà, the Chairwoman of FPT Software. So Ms. Ha has had a chance to have lunch with Professor Yoshua Bengio before.
Thank you very much.
Right, I remember.
Hello.
And
Nice to see you all.
joining us actually today, a special guest from Consulate General of Canada in Ho Chi Minh City, Ms. Jasmine Wahab, the Senior Trade Officer, also in the participants that seeing the event today online. So for the agenda today, Professor Yoshua Bengio will share with us his work and research around machine learning and drug discovery. Then we will have a round of discussions about AI ethics with Professor Bengio, Professor Ho Tu Bao, and Dr. Trương Gia Bình. Finally, we have Q&A sessions. Some of the audience will be invited to present some of their questions to the guest speakers directly. First, let's welcome Dr. Trương Gia Bình to deliver a remark congratulating the 2-year anniversary of the FPT and Mila partnership.
Professor Yoshua Bengio, actually, we are very proud with what we did 2 years ago to sign partnership with you. For that's 2 years, not too long, and it's a huge job have done, and that's amazing. And I would like to thank you, Professor Yoshua Bengio and Mila Institute and Frederick for support and for providing a great opportunity to Vietnamese talent. What even they cannot to dream, to see it in the dream. Why I say it? Because today they can join your summer schools, tea talk, and reading group from Vietnam. It's amazing. During my student, only I can join with my teachers, but in his room, if someone in Vietnam cannot to join it. That's amazing. Secondly, they can participate in the tough research on AI, even in the system 2. Think of how the young Miss of Vietnam can conduct with you research on system 2, and think of the numbers of research the Vietnamese conduct. And I so impressed with the numbers of paper submissions, 42. And really, we are something like 1/3 of Vietnam publications in the and A-star range. It's amazing. And more than that, we start to lay out foundation for further collaborations. Frederick visit Bengio to think how we can set up the kind of AI research institute in Quy Nhơn. We love it. We want it so much. And also the hundreds, thousands of students can know about our collaboration via media. That's a very great starting. And I do hope that in coming years we can do bigger achievements. Thank you very much for everything. Thank you.
Yes, Professor Joshua and Frederick, would you like to share some of your thoughts on the partnership for the past 2 years?
Yeah, I would like to say that it is indeed impressive, and we are very glad to have entered into this partnership. It's working. I think there could be even more fallouts in the future. And what I hope is that thanks to the seeds that we're planting, Vietnam young people will enter into these technologies and sciences that are going to be transforming the world in the coming decade. And so that's I think quite important.
I would like to add one thing. The achievement should be much bigger if Vietnamese talent can see you in person in Vietnam. Please come to Vietnam.
Yeah. Thanks for the invitation.
Yes, Frederick. Frederick, would you join us?
Yeah. Maybe I can add a few things. So Mila was actually very impressed with the students that are collaborating with our researchers, and I have to say that even myself, when I was in Vietnam, I was very impressed by the students and their willingness to learn. And I've had the opportunity to visit many countries, many of our partners, but FPT is probably one of the the closest relationship that we have at many levels, not only for fundamental research, but also all of the trainings and exchange that we have together. And we really hope that we can continue this for the next 3, 4, 5 years and even longer.
Thank you very much. I do hope so too. And thank you everyone for the wonderful remarks, for the collaboration. So our partnership has evolved greatly. Together we provided unique opportunities for young Vietnamese talents and for AI development, not only for FPT, but also for many, it's an inspiration for many other countries as well. I hope so. And at Mila, the Institute set the missions for AI for humanity, social responsibility, and beneficial development of artificial intelligence. So that's why today we're going to listen to one of the most advanced research from Mila. So please welcome Professor Yoshua Bengio to provide his lecture for AI in drug discovery. So please, Professor, you can start your lecture.
I will do so now. Thank you. Okay. I'm going to start by telling you why I got into this area of application, drug discovery. It's because of the pandemic, you might have guessed. I was, like many scientists, 2.5 years ago, asking myself, how can I help to deal with this terrible thing? And so I started reading about biology and the epidemic and epidemiology. And it turned out I had some students who had some expertise in chemistry, biology, and drugs. And we started thinking about how we could use machine learning in order to transform the way that drugs are discovered. Because typical drugs might take many years. In fact, drugs that can fight infections might take, like antibiotics, for example, or antivirals, might take 10 years. And when there's a pandemic, we cannot afford to wait 5 or 10 years to find solutions. So we need ways to accelerate the development of drugs, and machine learning AI can completely change that industry and the way that things are done. So I'll tell you a little bit about what we've been doing and why, and sort of some of the principles behind our work. Right. Yeah, I mean, the pandemic, with the COVID pandemic is one thing, but as I dug deeper into these questions of infectious diseases which give rise to pandemics, I realized that actually humanity is at risk. Like, anytime there could be a new pandemic, and one problem is that currently the pharmaceutical industry is not really investing very much in these things, and there's a whole economic reason behind this, even though it's worth a lot to society. Like the loss of economic value due to pandemics is the one we just had is huge, and in particular in the case of more generally the adaptation, the mutations that are happening to these pathogens, to these viruses and bacteria, because we're using drugs, they become resistant. And in fact, there are now quite a lot of bacteria that we don't have any drugs again, no antibiotic. Fortunately, right now, these bacteria are not too virulent, too lethal, but they could mutate and become really, really dangerous because we don't have any drug. We don't know how to fight them. So I think there's a real challenge for humanity to invest in technology to deal with that. And as I'll try to convince you, machine learning can really make a difference, reduce the costs, speed up the discovery. And also, the questions that are raised are at the frontier of machine learning research. These are not trivial things. And as I'll try to argue, solving these questions, advancing these questions, is going to give us very general purpose tools, not just for drug discovery, but for discovery, period, in general, scientific discovery, technological discovery. I think could in the future be transformed by using machine learning. Yeah, so just to give you some numbers about the problem of antimicrobial resistance, so the fact that these bacteria or these viruses or fungus are mutating and becoming insensitive to our drugs. This is a problem that's slowly rising. There's already 1.2 million deaths per year, and it's going to grow to 10 million deaths per year if we don't do anything. And the economic costs are also rising, and it's projected to be on the order of $100 trillion by 2050. Now, the good news is that there's been advances in biotechnology in the last few years that really opened the door to machine learning. So actually, I think that one of the areas of growth, economically speaking, for the next decade, that may be one of the greatest area of growth, is at the intersection of AI and biotechnology. It's in the area of drug discovery, but health more generally, but also agriculture, fighting climate change, and other environmental applications. And the reason we're able to get high throughput generation of large data sets is because there are now these technologies that can reprogram the DNA of organisms, and we can reprogram them so they can synthesize the molecules that we want. And we can do that on a large scale. So we can do an experiment with 100,000 different DNA sequences that ask, for example, a yeast to produce a new protein, a new peptide, which is a small protein. And each of them is going to be different and can be chosen by machine learning. But it's hard for a human to decide what should be those 100,000 sequences. It's just that it doesn't fit with the human brain abilities. The amount of data that is generated by these experiments, the number of experiments that we can control now with those technologies, it's impossible for a human to manage that and to absorb all that information. So we need machine learning, and the kind of machine learning we use involves what looks like an intractable problem that essentially consists in searching and finding like a needle in a haystack. In other words, for example, the number of potential drugs is huge, like 10 to the 60, or the number of theories that are going to explain some observed experimental results is also huge. So huge that even using computers, we cannot enumerate all the possibilities. So what I'm going to tell you about today is that machine learning can help us to represent all those possibilities, which we call posterior distributions over theories or sample candidate experiments, just to get access to generate the good theories or the good candidates. So in order to understand this, I need to bring you back to high school to understand the scientific method cycle. How do we discover new things? How do we discover new theories? How do we discover new drugs? So we start on the top left with data that we have accumulated. And we're going to be generating more data with new experiments. So there's going to be this cycle where we analyze the data and then produce new experiments, and that gives us more data and so on. So now I'm going to go a little bit more detail in this cycle and see where machine learning can be used. So first, given the data we have already accumulated, we can use machine learning to model that data, to train the, for example, to predict, given a candidate drug, what's the chance that it's going to be doing the job. And at that level, there's already some really difficult and exciting advances that are happening in machine learning on the side of modeling, using ideas of causal machine learning, which I'll say a few words about. Now, these kinds of models are not the usual kind of models that we train in machine learning, like with supervised learning, where you predict one variable given the other variables. Because we need those models to have a sort of knowledge of their own limitations, knowledge of their own uncertainty, because there could be multiple models that are compatible with the data. If you want multiple hypotheses that are compatible with the data, and we need to be able to have a handle on that, because it's going to help us design the next experiment. So how do we design the next experiment? Well, we want to choose an experiment that will teach us as much as possible, that will teach us about what are the correct theories, what are the right drugs that may work in this context. So we have a lot of uncertainty. Can we use the next experiment to reduce that uncertainty? So that's called experimental design, and here again we can use machine learning. And I'll talk about that. And finally, you can use machine learning to accelerate the experiments themselves using robots. I will not talk about that, but that's another place where you can use machine learning. Okay, now there's an aspect of this question of generating candidates, like new potential drugs. We would like our machine learning system to generate, of course, many candidates, but we would like these candidates to be different from each other. We need them to have enough diversity. And the reason is that the way that our experiments are typically going to be conducted, because we want to have high throughput, we want the experiment to be cheap, we want to generate a lot of data, is going to be using a cheap experiment, like in vitro, in a test tube. So in test tubes, we can actually do huge quantities of experiments in parallel, so they are very cheap. But of course, the test tube is not the same thing as your body. So, the test tube is going to give us some indication that the drug may work, but it may end up not working for all kinds of reasons when we take the drug into the body of first, mouse, and then later into the body of a human in a clinical trial. So it's really important that the set of candidates that we generate using machine learning have a lot of diversity, so that if it turns out that our in vitro, for example, evaluation was incorrect and some of the candidates don't work out in animals or humans, we still have other candidates that are quite different. So if we had all the candidates like very similar to each other, then we take a big gamble because maybe none of them is going to work. Whereas if they are diverse, then we have a greater chance of, at the end of the day, having a drug that's going to work for us. So that's why diversity is important. Now, one is how do we choose which candidates to try? And I said we could train a model that, say, learns a function f that predicts how good the drug will be based on the data we have. Y, and maybe we can train a neural net to predict Y given X. The problem is the number of possible X's, the number of possible candidates is exponentially large. I said like 10 to the 60. We cannot even try all of them in the computer. So even if we have a neural net that predicts Y given X, we cannot apply that neural net 10 to the 60 times. It's not feasible. So what could we do? Well, we could use generative models. So this is, one of the big advances of deep learning in the last decade, that we have neural nets that not only can make predictions, but they can imagine things. Mostly people have been using these generative models for synthesizing new images, and we've seen a lot of that. But here, it's not images that we want to synthesize, it's molecules. And this could be applied to any kind of object we want to experiment over. Molecules, materials, even potentially, programs. People are starting to use deep learning to generate programs, software. So these generative models are quite interesting. And now we have to find a way to train them so that we can use them in this active learning scientific experimentation loop. And that's what we've been doing. So this motivated our first paper on this subject that came out at the last NeurIPS, so that's December 2021. And we proposed these special way of training neural nets, which we call generative flow networks, that do exactly this, that they can they can be trained to generate complicated objects like graphs, which represent a molecule, but any kind of data structure. And they can be trained to generate those compositional objects through a sequence of steps such that they will generate the objects with a probability proportional to some given reward function. So normally in reinforcement learning, we're trying to find a sequence of steps that maximize a reward function. That's the typical thing, it's optimization. But those G-flow nets, they're a bit different. Instead of maximizing, they sample with some probability. So they sample the good things with more probability. That's important because it helps us to produce a diversity of candidates, which is what I was talking about and is in the title of the paper, you see. Yeah, so we did a lot of experiments to validate this and compare with existing methods for generating molecular graphs, Monte Carlo Markov chain methods, and classical reinforcement learning methods. And indeed, these methods find a lot more diverse set of candidate solutions. In a more recent paper that came out last summer at ICML, we extended this to include the notion of uncertainty I was talking about, of Bayesian uncertainty, that for some drugs, the neural net might have a lot of certainty that it's going to work or it's not going to work. And for other drugs, it might, have much less certainty because there's not enough data for these types of molecules that help the neural net make a confident prediction. So there are different methods that have been used in order to estimate that uncertainty. And then we can combine that information with the G-flow nets so that we can train them to generate candidates that are both in expectation looking good, but also have a lot of uncertainty, so they might, we might do even better than we think. So we apply this to the design of biological sequences, including drugs, but also new materials. And we find indeed that they can do comparable or better than existing methods, but more importantly, they can generate a lot more diversity in the candidates through these active learning settings. The last paper I want to talk about has to do with the hard question of how do we build a really good model of data that is never going to be overconfident and wrong. And that is important in order to estimate that uncertainty, that Bayesian uncertainty I was talking about. So this paper came out last August at the UAI conference, and it's about using G-flow nets in order to generate candidate causal graphs that explain the data. So you can think of a causal graph as a scientific theory that relates different variables and proposes which variable is the cause of which variable, what are the cause and effect relationship. Each cause and effect relationship becomes an edge in a graph. And so it's hard because the number of such graphs is super exponential. It grows very fast. And traditional methods would enumerate graphs, individual graphs, and try to find one graph that fits the data. Whereas using G-flow nets, we are able to learn a distribution over graphs. In other words, we can generate all the graphs that are compatible with the data. And that is very important in these kinds of applications of drug discovery that I've been talking about. Yeah, so this is part of a bigger question in machine learning, which up to now, let's say, there has not been very satisfactory answers. That is, how do we, for example, train neural nets that not give us just one answer to a problem, one model that fits the data, but somehow can capture all of the models that capture the data. And it's fundamentally hard because the number of such models could be exponentially large. In the past, methods that have been proposed have not worked that great because they made very strong assumptions, mathematical assumptions. And what I'm proposing this year is that we can use large neural nets, modern deep learning, to represent very rich Bayesian distributions. So this paper is the first step in that direction. Now, I mentioned causality before, so let me dig a little bit more into why this is important. One of the biggest challenges in machine learning now, maybe the biggest challenge, is that we have systems that are not as robust as they could be. And we know that they could be more robust because humans are more robust. So if we train the system on some data that's coming from some distribution, maybe from some country or some demographic, and then we try to use a machine learning model in a different setting, usually there's a big loss in performance. And this is called the out of distribution problem. And we would like to have good out of distribution generalization. And I and others think that the main solution to this problem comes from approaches like causal machine learning that are still in their infancy, which are able to conceive of the learning problem not as just learning one distribution, but learning a whole family of distributions corresponding to the context that may be different interventions by people, different experiments that we might do in a scientific context, different initial states, different environments. And so if we can learn a causal model well, we can generalize to all of those distributions. And this is challenging, but one of the bottlenecks is precisely that we would like to be able to capture all of the causal models that are compatible with the data, and the kind of methods in this paper allows us to do that. Yes, I think I will stop here and take your questions.
Thank you very much, Professor Joshua Bengio, for a very quick lecture for AI discovery, AI for drug discovery. And the audience has a lot of questions for your lecture. So first, I would like to introduce one of the audience who have the first questions. Okay, I received his question now, so I would like to send it directly to you. So can drug discovery be a possible topic for a small team with limited resources? Or does this topic require a mass-scale resource for experimenting and production?
Well, that's a great question that I've been asking myself, because at Mila we have a lot of machine learning resources and computers and stuff, but we don't have biological experimental setups. And the really large scale ones are happening in industry. So it depends what the contributions you want to do. If you want to do contributions to AI for drug discovery on the AI side, you can without ever doing an actual experiment, because there are a lot of public data sets. So in the experiments, in the papers that I mentioned, actually, it's all using public domain data sets. So for example, data sets that relate particular molecules with their activity against bacteria. And so there's a lot that can be done this way. Now, of course, that helps to develop better algorithms, But if you want to actually turn that into drugs, you need to do biological experiments, like real, real world experiments. And for that, you need to associate with organizations that do these things. So at Mila right now, we have, I think, at least 5 contracts, 5 partners with biotechs and pharmaceutical companies. They are very interested in working with AI researchers because they understand that it's, AI is going to transform their business completely in the next few years, and they are willing to do these kinds of experiments. Also, what we have been doing is collaborating with other academics in biology with expertise in drug discovery, and they have, some small scale setups that are sufficient to do, quite a few experiments already. So, yeah, there are ways to do that. And then the last thing I want to say is, I have students have started a company, a startup. They don't have a lot of money, and they don't have like biological benches. So what they're doing is they're making deals with other startups that have expertise in biology and then that have the equipment to run these biological experiments. So, even if you don't have the full thing, you can associate with other people who do, and that can work.
Thank you. The next question is, what can ensure the safety of the drug that designed by AI? Because since some of the effect of the drugs may occur after 5 to 10 years in the future.
Yeah, no, this is a great question. Well, we have already governmental organizations like the FDA in the US. And in many countries, we have some equivalents, for example, in Canada. And these organizations are precisely, with the task of making sure that the drugs that are going to be put on the market, they're going to be used by doctors and patients, are safe. So when before a drug can be commercialized, they have to do clinical trials, and the phase 1 of the clinical trial is to verify that the drug is not toxic. Now, you're right that these studies, they cannot take 5 years. They might take a few months. And we don't know the long-term effects. But so that is a trade-off that doctors are aware of. So when they prescribe a drug which is new, we don't yet know what the long-term effects, and they might be more prudent, and they might use the drugs on people who otherwise might be in real trouble. And then, of course, as years pass, and we can the FDA mandates doctors to give back information when there are problems. So then we collect information about longer-term impact. But yeah, it's not easy because there's an ethical question here. Do we take a risk and save lives now, with some risk, or we don't do anything? Not obvious.
Very interesting. The last questions from today, I picked the best 3 questions. So I know there's a lot of questions actually coming into the system, but I think the next question is quite interesting. So the machine learning methods for drug discovery are mostly aimed at deriving the novel molecular structure.
Yes.
But is there much exploration in assisting the chemists synthesizing of these new structures?
Yeah, there's also machine learning. In fact, we have a paper a couple of years ago to use reinforcement learning to help design how to synthesize the molecule. So let's say we have the molecule, which is a sort of graph, so the chemical formula and so on. How do we construct it? So what sequence of reactions and what chemicals, which we call reactants, should be used at each step. And it's not obvious. So, I mean, humans will do it by hand. There are chemists that have the expertise, but it may take a lot of trial and error. And so we can actually train machine learning to do that, because there's very large databases of the recipe for synthesizing molecules. So it's like supervised data, and then we can use reinforcement learning to kind of reward the machine if it's able to find a sequence that yields the correct answer, the correct molecule that you're trying to generate. Let me add something. You didn't ask me, but you may have noted in my presentation that I used fairly mathematical terms to talk about these new methods. So these are probabilistic methods, talking about causality and Bayesian. These are pretty advanced topics in machine learning. And the most important thing to keep in mind for this, and I think many other applications in the future of machine learning, is that yes, we will need engineers who understand those methods, but for the scientific advances in machine learning, we'll need people who have very strong math background. So I'm saying this because I think there's a good tradition of mathematics in Vietnam, and I think it's important to cherish that. It's going to give an edge to the people who have that sort of training.
Thank you, professors. Our topic today attracts a lot of people on the live stream right now. Thousands of people are tuning to our channel to listen to your lecture. And you mentioned in your answer as well, there are a lot of ethical concerns when we're dealing with the power of AI, and especially when it comes to healthcare, to drug discovery. So I would like to move to the next part of the today sessions. Well, we're going to have a small panel discussions with Professor Yoshua, with Professor Hồ Tú Bao, with Dr. Trương Gia Bình. I would like to talk about the usage of AI and the AI ethics. So, so first, I would like to ask Professor Yoshua Bengio, is there any other ethical concerns in AI for healthcare, for drug discovery, other than the one you mentioned in your answer? Is there any big challenge, bigger challenge than that?
Yes, lots. Maybe some of you have heard of an experiment that was done by machine learning scientists working on drug discovery. So one of the things we can do with machine learning, I mentioned like designing the molecules so that they will bind well to the target, maybe like a bacteria, and also using machine learning to synthesize. But sorry, another application is to predict the toxicity. So we discussed earlier the question of whether a drug will be toxic, and normally we use this predictor that we can train from data so that we avoid drug that will be toxic. However, these people have shown that we can use the same neural net that predicts toxicity, and instead of designing molecules that minimize toxicity, you can design them to maximize toxicity. In other words, design new poisons, right? And of course, this could be used, for example, in a military setting. We already know some very dangerous poisons that can be used to kill people. And now if people start, I mean, if like military organizations start using AI to design new poisons that could be potentially even more lethal or easier to distribute or something, then that could be very dangerous for humanity. So they did that experiment to raise an alarm. And that's often the important thing to do when ethical questions arise like this. We need awareness. We need people to understand the dangers so that we can come up with legislation, we can come up with social norms, we can come up with company guidelines to minimize the chances of misuse and to penalize organizations that use technology in a way that's going to hurt humans.
Thank
So
you.
that's one example. I'm sure we'll discuss more.
Yes. So we can see that comes with the power. So we need the responsibility to use.
Exactly.
Yes, the power of AI. So Professor Hotubao, I know you have been working a lot for AI ethics. So you have listened to Professor Bengio some of the concerns regarding ethical concern when we design drugs and for longer term for healthcare. So can you actually tell us more on what is actually AI ethics and what are the principles for AI ethics? You are on mute. Can you unmute? Yes.
I also have a chance to work for many years on analyzing the medical data. I work in Japan. The Japan Institute of Science and Technology, we work with hospital and deal with the different kind of data like stomach data people gather for many years, or like liver disease data. And also in Vietnam, we join on establishing and supporting the EMR, electronic medical records in hospital, and also work on data for drug utilization, not for drug discovery. But anyway, in our case, we think the privacy of the data, to protect the data of the people, is also a very important issue. It's related to the responsibility of AI people, because we know that AI is produced by people. So two things. One is the people who produce the AI product and the people who use the AI. And as you ask, talking about the principle of ethics in AI, I think also as many people discussed, there are several things people need to care. Particularly, it is the responsibility of people. Firstly, people talk about the fairness in AI. That means we need to we design so that to respect the discriminatory non-harm that do not, yes. And the other principle is sustainability, because the AI product is strongly influence on the society and also people. So the accuracy, the security and robustness of product is other thing to be considered. And also an important principle of ethics in AI is accountability. That means we people who produce AI product should be able to talk about to answer the question about our product in the process of producing it, and auditability of the product. Other principle is transparency. That means everything we do should be able to reply the permissibility, and as I said, discriminatory of no harm. We need to be able to explain the process of produce the product And in short, it is on about the responsibility of people who produce the product and also uses the AI product. It is something I think about some principle of ethics in AI.
Yes, thank you. I can see that there are so many aspects that we have to consider when we're working on some particular topics or some particular projects and some application of AI. So you mentioned about diversity and also the in your talk, Professor Joshua Bengio. So I know that drug has been tested and data has been collected and mostly skewed to the developed country. So people like Western people usually got more data on their healthcare, more than Asian or some underdeveloped country. So is there a concern or is there a problem in bias when we use AI to create drugs, or we can use AI to improve our healthcare, but it vastly based on the data we collected from the developed world.
That's true. In fact, it's not just the problem of different ethnic groups. It's also even a gender issue. So until recently, a lot of the clinical trials did not involve women, or not enough, and did not involve children. So we have drugs that we don't really know if they're going to be toxic on children, for example. We know they're not toxic on adults, and then there's also an imbalance in the gender for many drugs. So this is changing, and this regulation now that is trying to guarantee that we have better representation at that level. Regarding the ethnic composition, this is indeed a real issue. So the reason why all of these matter is because machine learning predictors and the drugs, they might work well for the demographic on which they have been trained and tested, but we don't really know if they still work well on other demographics. And so I think it is important in different countries that we make sure that the clinical trials are representative. One thing that I've seen happening is that because clinical trials are very expensive, we see more and more clinical trials happening in developing countries, actually. And so maybe this is a way for countries like Vietnam to make sure that they will be well represented in those designs. And I don't know if this is happening in Vietnam, but I know, for example, it's happening in other Asian countries. But yeah, these are hard questions. From the machine learning point of view, like when you train, you can do proper tests. So even if you have only a subset of the population that maybe is, different ethnic groups, you can make sure you evaluate the accuracy separately on each group, so that you can check, at least at some level of statistical reliability, that the product is robust across these groups. And even during training, there's a way to rebalance the training set. So even maybe if like 80% of the data comes from one group, you can train so that you visit those examples less often, and over sample the examples from the minority groups. So there are solutions, and as Dr. Bao was saying, what's important is transparency here, so that we know what has been done in order to protect the public properly and abide by those ethical principles.
Thank you. As one of the leading organization in Vietnam, so I hope FPT can start working on some of the problem like you just mentioned, like the data discriminations for like underdeveloped country like Vietnam. So Dr. Bing, do you have some comment on that?
I would like to address broader things about the ethic of AI because that's so important. We know you should worry about that. Humans is a very complicated natures, and you know, still war. Every people want peace, but the war now, and we see it. And therefore, from FPT point of view, I would like more kind of practical actions than and immediate actions. I see three things. First, I think we should think AI as a new literacies of the people. Every people should learn something from AI, from the first grade to university, because AI will impact their life. And let they have education on AI, and let they bring AI to their job, to their activities, to their learnings, improve the efficiencies of what they're doing. Second, I think we really need the people live for values, AI for social good. And that kind of thing should be reflected in FPT education system aligned with 17 United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And our quality system now based on that 17 goals. And last point, I think the people learning through practice, through the experience. And therefore, I really would like the Beijing students, even pupil, they start to do the kind of social responsible works. And if that should be AI for good, that's excellent point. And we try to implement that. FPT education today quite big. We have about 140,000 pupils and students, and that number will doubling after every 2 years. And if you can do these kind of things in FPT education system, and then that should be kind of inclusive father. It's kind of way to other educational institutions. Okay, and your visit should be raised us interest much, please, coming to Vietnam.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Bing, for the very interesting points. So you mentioned about education is very important part, and I think education is also a very important factor, especially in AI ethics. So what is your viewpoint on that? How AI engineers, how AI students should learn about AI ethics? When and is a good time for them to learn? Before they start learning or after they finish their learning in technical? So Professor Yoshua Bengio, can you?
Yeah, no, I completely agree that it has to be all the way that we educate our students with the right values. One thing that is kind of sad is that in computer science, the students just study computers and they have very little understanding of social questions. They have very little understanding of how society works. They have very little understanding of human psychology. Of course, they cannot study sociology and psychology and political science at the same time as much as they study computer science. But I think they need some healthy dose of knowledge in these fields so that later when they are engineers and researchers, they understand better the impact of the products that they design or deploy. Yeah, so I completely agree. Now, one thing I would add is education is super important, but there is also a political aspect in the sense that governments need to set the rules, come up with regulation. This is starting to happen in Europe, in Canada, in the US, other countries. Governments are starting to draft regulation. And one reason why it is important is that you want to have a level playing field between companies. So imagine you have two companies, one that is very self-conscious and cares about, social good, a good corporate citizen, like FPT seems to be, and let's say another company that is a competitor and doesn't care about society except for making money. If we don't have the right rules, then the second company is going to win over because there's a cost to being ethical, and if the cost is not the same for all the companies, then we're in trouble because the bad companies will win over eventually. So it's really important that also governments at some point be part of setting the rules so that every company, looks at the fair level playing field.
So there should be some kind of initiative or some rewards from the governments to encourage organization to do good things.
I'm totally agree with that. Yeah, that's very important.
So let's talk about privacy. That's one of the very important factors in AI ethics. Many countries, treat privacy differently from each other, and like you just mentioned about governance as well. So some governments actually really care about privacy, and some may not. So is this a cultural thing, or is there an universal model that we should use for data privacy? So maybe Professor Hồ Tú Bảo, do you want to, what do you think about the different opinion between countries about data privacy?
Yes, when I work in Japan, I think people protect privacy is a high priority. I want to ask the data of patient from Chiba Hospital, but my friend, one professor said, I can only give you my father data. I cannot the other for you to study. But in Vietnam, of course, very strictly in Vietnam, it is much easier. We even can receive much data from hospital. Of course, we do some kind of identification, but I also see clearly the protection of privacy or respect privacy in different countries are very different. So, and that's the problem in developing country like Vietnam, is still not be carefully considered. Concerning to your talk, we know that our country is a period of doing digital transformation, and people on way in general think that the law is very important. The government is on the way of building the law strategy. So anyway, law of data, but it's still, it takes some time and it's still not completed. But I think when it finished, and things should be much better controlled. And also concerning in education, I would like to tell you that so far in Vietnam, roughly about 10 universities already have a bachelor program on AI. So I think, yes, about 10 universities in Vietnam. And many others have a master program on AI, but only 10 has a bachelor program on AI and data science. And I think course or ethics in AI should be introduced and should be completed. If some still not added in curriculum, I think it should be added to the program, and it is very important.
I want to mention that here in Canada, there's too much emphasis on privacy for health data. I mean, it is important, but you need to put in the balance both the privacy and how much you can use technology to save lives or cure people. And right now, it's just privacy. And so the result is there's a lot of medical data that the researchers don't have access to.
Right.
And I think you can find compromises where, for example, the researchers, not everyone can have access to the data. You need to be, certified, and so on. And then we can develop new solutions, new medical treatments, and so on. But right now, it's very difficult.
Right, I completely agree. My professor in Japan, he also say in Japan they are too strict to privacy of medical data, and that's also a barrier to use the data or doing the research right now. And they also think the government need to change their law.
Yes, so it's a trade-off, right? So if you give too much, then it's a concern about privacy, but you protect it too much, it's a hamper of the development of AI. Since AI is majorly really needs good data to learn, so finding the right balance, the balance point between these actually is a very challenging factors. Yeah. So. How about FPT? So do you plan to put AI ethics into FPT's university?
Yes, I just mentioned about what we're doing. Yeah, I think the two factors very important. AI or even in the society. The first factor is the human. Human is a core. And they conscious, and therefore just you raise the cross-conscious issues and AI. People and conscious, that's very important. If they are good heart, they will do good things. If they have bad mind, they will do bad thing. And therefore we have to invest to build the right people with a good heart, loving each other, living for values and so on. That's so important. But anyway, there is people in opposite. And there we need the government. We have to have the law, we have to enforcement, we have to do that. Otherwise, as Professor Bengio mentioned, it's unfair. How the economy should go if the unfair. It's not market economy anymore. And therefore, very important matters of law and enforcement, and also the kind of the buildings, the kind of cultures and people with the values.
Thank you, Dr. Bing, for your comments. So we only have a few more minutes left, so I actually would like one of the audience who are really eager to ask the questions. So we can have only one question for the audience. So can you open your microphone and raise your questions?
Hello, good evening, everyone.
Hello, can you introduce yourself and ask your questions?
Yes, I'm Kian, and right now I am a senior student at the Hanoi University of Science and Technology. I study machine learning for about 2 years, and next year I want to find an opportunity at an IT company such as FPT Software to learn more about artificial intelligence and machine learning. So, could you please share more about the career path in AI field in FPT? Thank you.
So maybe so for this question, so I will help the panelists to answer. So for AI career, so thanks to the partnership with Mila, so if you are a student still learning AI, you can learn all the program from FPT University, and through this partnership, you can actually access to the materials and lectures from Mila. And if you already graduate, you can apply for AI residency program to do research in AI if you are good at the research, or if you can join as a production team, if you are good at engineer and wants to bring your knowledge into practical application. Or in further, you can even go to Mila for for the exchange program to visit Professor Yoshua and visit Frederick in Canada, and bring the knowledge from Mila back to Vietnam. So I hope that answer your questions. Yeah, we have a lot of opportunities.
I'd like to add one thing. If
Yes.
you know, you can be self-taught. You can read a lot. There's a lot of information that is available on the internet for free. Papers, code, tutorials, talks. And if you're motivated, you can just go ahead and sort of try to understand and read a lot. And that's how you're going to become an expert, mostly.
Self-learning is a very important part.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. I add one more comment for the question. Is last year I have a chance to visit Mila Institute in Canada. Have a chance to have the lunch with Professor Yoshua, and I understand how the Milas cooperate with others university, and I see thousands of master and doctorate go with Milas and do the fundamental research. Very interesting, and I dream that more and more people from Vietnam and ASEAN country can come there. And thank you for 2 years cooperation between FPT and Mila. And please come to Vietnam. Thousands of people, young people here are waiting for you. And we want to build the AI's values in Quy Nhơn. So please, and Frederick, please come to Vietnam and join us to build the value AI in ASEAN country. Thank you.
I also would like to add that 5,000 young people watching for our programs.
Excellent.
Yeah, today the channels attracted more than 5,000 people register and watching right now. So we can see that there's a lot of young people are very eager and very enthusiastic to learn more about the advanced knowledge of AI, how AI can change our future. Unfortunately, today's time is already up. And thank you very much for the panelists, for Professor Yoshua Bengio, Professor Hồ Tú Bảo, Dr. Trương Gia Bình, and Ms. Chu Thị Thanh Hà for joining us today and have a great discussions on the potential of AI, the power and the responsibility of AI when we are using this technology to advance our life in the future. Thank you very much, everyone, again. I hope Professor Yoshua Bengio will have a great day today, since it's morning time in Canada. And have a good night for everyone in Vietnam, who is already almost 10 p.m. over here. And thank you, Professor Ho Tu Bao, for joining us. Again, see you again. Bye-bye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you very much.